Morning mediums, welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. It's season 2, episode 47. I am Josh Hayes here with my co-host Scott Moon, and today the author of the Owner Trilogy and best-selling Polity Universe series, Neal Asher, joins the show. His latest novel, Infinity Engine, which is part of the Polity series, was just released a couple of months ago and is doing extremely well. He was first published in a magazine called Back Brain Recluse, number 14, which was released in 1989 and has since published over 23 novels and written countless other stories. And today Neal joins us to talk about his writing journey. Neal, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic for you to join us from across the pond there. It's a little in the morning here, but what is it, 5 o'clock in the evening over there?
Yeah, 5, yeah.
So thanks for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us and talk with us. I'm sure everybody that's watching knows who you are and what you've written, but for those that may not, can you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
All right, okay. Well, my first major published book was by Macmillan in year 2000. But prior to that, I was writing lots of short stories in small press magazines like this Back Brain Recluse and many others, with all sorts of strange names, like Grotesque was one of them up there. I also... I had a small, there was a small publisher called Tangent who did a novella of mine called The Parasites, and they also did a collection of short stories called The Engineer Reconditioned, but they went to the wall, unfortunately. But look out for those, because if you get hold of copies of those, they're worth quite a bit of money, apparently.
Oh, nice.
Or so people on eBay would like to think, by the prices they put up.
Right. Now we're on the hunt for them. We're going to round all the copies, and we'll get a worldwide exclusive market on those.
Monopoly.
Oh yeah, that's our quest now.
There was another one. There was I think it was before what's called the net book agreement came in. There was a publisher called Club 199 that wanted to do small books to sell in stands in airports. This was the idea behind it, and they took a novella of mine as well, which you probably won't be able to find anywhere. That was called Mind Games Fool's Mate. But then, after 2000, I published more than a novel a year, more or less. So hence it is about 23 now. I tend to lose count, because what do you count? Well, when somebody asks me how many books have you published, I tend to lose count, because what is a book? Is a novella a book? Is a collection of short stories a book? And also there's a difference between how many have you written and how many have you published, and yeah, it's all over the place.
So what do you think the ratio is between written to published? Because I know a lot of people, for every book you publish, maybe you've written a couple others.
Well, in my case, the ratio, well, I don't know what the ratio is, because I have to do that mathematics stuff. But no, I've got, when I started out writing, obviously many years ago, I started out, I'm going to be a writer now, so I started out with a fountain pen,
right,
and writing longhand and so on, and then moved on to typing on a manual typewriter. I went every step of the way in every respect. I went from writing longhand, manual typewriter, to electric typewriter with Tipex, to actually the short stories that I was getting published when I first got them published. I did real copy and paste. Cut and paste.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Real cut and paste, where I cut pieces out and stuck them, then put it through a photocopier and all this. I did that. Went through all the different iterations of computer, like your your green screen. Oh God, what was the word processor program? I can't remember it, but.
Oh, he said there's a couple. I remember back when they had the old Apple IIe's before the Macs, and they had the green screen, and then they went to, I can't remember what was next. Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of less.
What is
than
it? Commodore, the Commodore 64,
Commodore
and
64.
I wrote on a Tandy
I'm not
1000.
talking about the computer. I'm talking about the word processing program that I use. I can't remember the name of it.
Word Perfect.
Anyway. And of course, with stories going on to a, was it 5 1/4 floppy and all that.
You had one chapter per disc.
And the first computer I had was that was via my brother, because he went into IT, and there was me sitting at a typewriter, and he convinced me that I needed a computer. He was quite right. 1 megabyte hard disk it had.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I remember the first computer I ever had was a used computer from my uncle's business or something. It had 20 megabytes, and all my friends were like, that's too big. You will never ever use that much memory.
I think, there's a famous quote there. I can't remember who it was or what it was, but there's a famous quote that runs along those lines that, you'll never need this. These computers are a daft idea or whatever. I can't remember what it is, but somebody will no doubt tell you.
Right.
You won't ever use those newfangled microwaves. Who wants to eat food with radiation in it?
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
So out of all those different types of writing, which one's your favorite? What?
It's I think probably short story writing is the favorite, but then I think maybe that's because you get the payoff much quicker. Yeah.
Right.
You're right. I mean, I do a short story. I can do it, say, in a day or 2 days or something like that. Well, with a novel, it's the hard grind, isn't it? And you just going and going.
Short stories can be deceptively hard to write, though. I mean, because with a short story, you got to be pretty tight with your writing.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, it was a good discipline. I felt it was a good discipline for me to go from that into novels. One thing that I found out with the editing, the editing process. I mean, I'll write a book. I'll send it off to the publishers. The editor will go over it. Yeah, all the pencil marks or well, not pencil marks now. That's all done on computer as well.
Right.
And it comes back to me, and I decide what's what. Well, what I heard was most writers, they send their books to the publisher. It goes through the editing process, and when they've finished, their books are generally shorter than they started out, because lots of bits are cut. But what happened with me, I was sending it to the publisher, going through the editing process, and the books are ending up like 1,000 or 2,000 words longer. Because I was so terse, because I was writing like I was writing a short story.
Right.
So,
Right.
That generally, the tighter the writing, the more forceful impact it has. So, your editor makes suggestions where they wanted more added, or how'd that work?
Oh, it suggests. Well, I'll tell you a story. My first editor was like an old school editor at Macmillan. So he edited in pencil. And when he first got grid linked, he went all over it. And he makes suggestions for grammar, rearranging sentences, whatever, all the way through with pencil. But when he sent the typescript back to me, he put a rubber inside, to rub out the pencil. Right. Not the other sort of rubber, but eraser.
Okay.
You put an eraser inside and just put a little note with it saying up to you. Yeah. And it's suggestions, a better word to use, this kind of thing. I mean, like way back, I tended to use look too much. Yeah.
Right.
He looked at her and this looked like this, and whatever. Well, then he would come back with suggestions to knock out repetition, sort of saying, oh, perhaps a better word here would be peered, you know, or glanced, or this kind of thing. There's a lot of that goes on.
And you published, you said you published Gridlink in 2000, which is the first book in the Agent Cormac series, rather. And that also kicked off the Polity Universe for you. When you wrote that book, did you have any idea it was going to turn into what it is now?
Well, when I wrote Gridlinked, I just wrote it as a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think about it as a series. But thereafter, I mean, the contracts kept coming, and it turned into a series of 5 books, which is, so I'm told, ties together very well. Yeah.
Now that you just published Infinity Engine, which is 11 books, no, 15 books in your 15 novels in the Polity Universe. They're not published chronologically. So if you read them in published order, you don't get the chronological story. Was that something that you did intentionally, or did you just write the story as you went and then felt like, I'm going to go back and put some of these stories in to fill out more of the world?
Well, what initially happened was, before this publisher said, you know, let's have a look at this, I'd written Gridlinked, I'd written the Skinner, and I'd written an outline of the line of Polity. Okay. Yeah, he came back after they'd looked at Gridlinked, and after a few things had gone, he came back and said, okay, here's a 3-book contract. So I mean, the Skinner was set in a different time in the Polity from Gridlinked, and the line of Polity was a follow-up to Gridlinked. So that's how it started out. But thereafter, what I tried to do was I would write a Polity book in that Cormac series, and then something else in between, to break it up a bit.
Right.
Because I believe I wrote, I'm not quite sure of the order, but I wrote after Line of Polity, was it Cow, I think?
Let's see. I'm trying to look at the published order, but it says Gridlink, Line of Polity, The Brass Man. But let me see. 2003. Yes, Cowl. Yep, 2004.
I mean, and that was totally different. I mean, that was a time travel. That was a time travel book. Nothing to do with the Polity at all. Which
apparently got nominated for a Philip K. Dick Award.
Yep. Yeah, it did.
That's
another little story for you on that, if you like.
Yes, go for it. We love stories.
Well, I wrote Cow, and there was a degree of repetition in it, because there's a female who is dragged back through time by a organic time machine, a thaw, which is wrapped around her arm.
Okay.
Each time she arrives in a particular time period, and she has to get something to eat, survive, whatever. Yeah, and then she gets dragged back again. Well, that can get a bit, obviously repetitive. Right. It got even more repetitive because when I researched, obviously, the time span of prehistory and so on, and to try to divide it up, I realised just how many times she had to stop if it was to follow the logic of what I was doing. But when I submitted it, the editor turned around to me and, this needs working on. So I did. I changed it. I made an awful lot of changes to that book. But even then, apparently one editor said, "Oh, I think we made a mistake with this book."
Uh-oh.
Then it gets shortlisted for the Dick Award.
That's on a list of things you don't want to hear from your editor or your agent.
Yeah.
You put tons of work into a project like that. So the Polity, if I'm saying it right, universe, what are some defining characteristics of that? I mean, that's that's a story verse that you write various things in. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, the Polity, I mean, it basically started in those short stories that I was writing for these small press magazines. And well, I wanted to tell stories, but I didn't want to be, and I wanted to tell stories about the future, you know, science fiction stories, but I didn't want to be to put too many constraints on myself, too many restrictions. So the Polity grew from that, something big where I can tell just about any story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got low tech worlds, high tech worlds. You've got instantaneous travel. You've got other kinds of travel. You've got aliens here and there, and so, you know, strange ecologies on different planets and so on. It all came from those short stories.
Yeah.
I mean, the Skinner, which is a book that quite a few people like. When I actually sat down, right, I'm going to write a book. I thought, right, what am I going to write about? And I thought, what are my favourite stories, short stories that I've written, and I'll expand from those. And it was 2 stories published in these magazines. One was called Spatterjay, which is the name of the planet in the Skinner, and one was called Snails, which was a very strange story about well, giant floating snails with their shells were actually like gas balloons, and they had adapted people living inside them. It was a very strange story. But I took
Sounds like
I took characters from those 2 stories. I took elements of those 2 stories, and that's how I created the Skinner, the book, The Skinner.
There's a lot of people wondering in the live chat about your bookcase. Preston Lay asked about perhaps the audiobooks, and do you have a favorite audiobook or a collection that you listen to? And on that same vein, do you have a favorite book that you've read and like to read repeatedly?
Well, I haven't listened to very many audiobooks, to be honest with you. In fact, the last audiobooks I listened to were mine. So favorite books, oh god, I mean, this is just one small piece of my collection. Yeah. Right. I mean, I've read loads. In fact, I've only just recently gone back to starting to reread these books. But favorite books, oh, there's so many. I mean, in recent years, well, depends how recent you want to get. Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks. Right. That's one I love. Actually, what's his name? Peter Watts, Blind Sight. That was a very good science fiction book. But there's so much here that I like. I mean, fantasy. David Gemmell.
Yeah.
I've never read a bad David Gemmell book. There's lots. I mean, there's something I say in the one moment. I'll be back.
And awesome. With that, Neal left the show.
We're like, no, don't run away. Promise.
We heard him running and screaming. Like in the forward of the Skinner. Was it my thanks? Thanks to all those excellent people whose names stretch through the alphabet from Aldous to Zelazny. Yeah. And it kept me spellbound for my life. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
I am discovering on rereading that a lot of things don't quite stand the test of time, I'm afraid. But.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me anyway when you talk to some people and they're like, have you read any of these books? And they read them off, and they're mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when science fiction kind of changed and came into a big genre in and of itself, and like Larry Niven and those.
Yeah.
But I've read Ringworld, and I read it just a couple of years ago. But it was such a big deal when it came out, and now you read it and you're like, it's an okay book. But there's so much better books out now. But back then, it was a really big book.
Yeah.
And Burn Me at the Stake, but I did not like Dune. I read Dune and couldn't.
Oh,
Man, I
Shoot that man.
I know. I
I'm
listened to it
over
on
your house
audiobook.
right now, Josh.
I don't know if it was the audiobook or what, but man, I trudged through that thing, and I read it just so I could say that I read it. But
Yeah.
I would be if I tried to read Dune again, because I mean, as I've just found out, I won't say who the writer was, but I was rereading some books that I know that back in the 80s I was like really looking forward to,
Right.
and I really enjoyed back then. I read them now, and I'm skipping bits. It's all a bit, oh no, I'm bored with this. It's sort of a bit difficult.
There are some books that I can read again and again, and some books, even though I loved them the first time, they're just not the same the second time. I guess it depends on what's driving the story. Is the sense of surprise and discovery what's driving the story, or is it the world building? Like there's, particularly in fantasy, I can read them over and over sometimes because I'm not reading to find out what happens in the story. I'm reading to go into that place and hang out. But even then, I don't reread a lot of books now just because there's not enough time.
Yeah,
I read a lot, but it's hard to.
Like you say, it depends on how it's done. I mean, I just started rereading the Book of the New Sun, Gene Wolfe.
Mm-hmm.
Starts with Shadow of the Torturer, then the Claw of the Conciliator, and all these. And they were out in the 80s. I mean, and this is fantasy, but the language, it's just so good. It still stands up.
Right.
I mean, oddly, other things. A little while ago, I read. How was it? A very old book. It was A. Van Vogt.
yeah,
And I sure how I'd get on with Clark and Asimov now, though. But
Yeah. Well, and some. Go ahead, Josh.
no, I was just gonna say that reminded me. I tried to read Rendezvous with Rama, and
yeah,
I probably got like 6 chapters in, and I couldn't do it anymore. I had to stop.
I haven't read Rendezvous with Rama yet, and somebody recommended that I read it, and so I bought it, and it's of course on my to be read pile and whatnot. But I was going to say,
sorry.
I was going to say, like talking about reading books from our past, I guess it's like some writers like Asimov or Heinlein, like Heinlein in particular. His writing style changed over the years, so it depends on which one you're reading. Are you reading early, mid, or late? And so some I like better than others. And I think a lot of the people that were so prolific, you got to pick your favorite book in their series.
Yeah.
And I love Dune, and I've read it several times. Josh, thank you very much. I read his son's books too, most of them. And I ran out of gas because there was like so many. But I also like his son's take off on it. So, although the first Dune book was slow.
I just turned off like half of our audience.
No.
I mean, I read Dune, and I went through the whole series. It went up to Chapter House, and then he died, didn't he? Frank Herbert died. And I was thinking, it's a terrible thing, but I was thinking, oh, you sod, why did you do that?
Well, and it's a good version of nowadays in the gaming society. They call that leveling up. Paul Atreides becomes the Muad'Dib or whatever, or the Kwisatz Haderach. I can't even say it right, but you get to the point where he's so powerful. What do you do with that character? He's about
that. I've talked about that a lot with people in various things. If you've got to have kryptonite, yeah. Mm-hmm. You've got to have you can make a character powerful, but there's got to be some kind of weakness. Otherwise, there's no story.
Right.
I mean that is the problem with the Cormac books. Not the problem. you've got the character Cormac, who grows through these books and gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and he acquires certain powers in the last book. And I get fans coming back to me and saying like, "Oh, when are you going to do another Cormac one?" And I'm sort of saying, "Well, I can't because he's too powerful now." Yeah,
Right.
Cormac versus
gone off into the sunset, and that's that.
right. He's earned his retirement. Come on.
Well,
So at some point they earn their retirement. You know, they can't just keep saving the universe or fighting everybody or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. He's retired now.
Right.
He's living on a nice, like, Caribbean-y type world somewhere, like sipping a pina colada, and he's fine.
He's chilling out listening to Keystroke Medium on his iPod.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. So after all these novels written in the Polity Universe, one of our friends of the show, Richard Fox, asks, "What's the best way for a sci-fi writer to create immersive worlds?" I think one of the many things that's been said about your universe is the very detailed and in-depth world building of the series. What are your thoughts on that, and what steps do you take to make sure that it's something that people can really bite into?
That's a difficult one because the way I write, I don't really plan. Yeah, I don't have a board with all post-it notes up and all this sort of thing. I generally just sort of sit down and just go. What makes it immersive is perhaps because I'm immersed in it. Simple as that. I try to analyze how I do it. I don't know. I mean, I say technical and biological details and so on concerned. I mean, I do read an awful lot of science, and that sort of comes out almost, it goes into it almost by osmosis, if you like. It's how do you make it immersive? It's because I'm in it.
You just get immerse yourself.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not a spectator. I'm not the distant narrator from what I'm doing. I mean, like, for example, if I'm writing a fight scene, if anybody looked in through the window here, they'd probably think I was nuts.
I'm picturing that right now.
I'll be typing a bit, then going, yeah, right, and then he does, yeah, no, like this. I'm completely in it.
Could be kind of problematic if you start making out with your computer screen.
You have to close the blinds for that. You know? you just close the blinds and go on. See, and Josh can't do it that way because we talked about his cluttered desk.
Yeah,
and he would trip and fall and spill his coffee and stuff like that. So you got to clear an area. Now, have you always pretty much been written in the same way? I mean, not so much planning, just getting immersed in the writing, or has your writing style evolved over the years?
I mean, there's probably sometimes there's more planning involved now. Yeah, I mean, for example, when I wrote the Cormac series, I mean, from book to book, I didn't know how long it was going to be. I was just doing it. Yeah, all right, I'll go back to that now. And the story, like, just developed. The overall, you know, the overall plot arc developed out of that. I mean, it's a bloody miracle it happened, really. But but now I do think ahead more now. But half the time it will only be like a vague image or a picture or just some idea of how this is going to end up, and I just write my way there. And sometimes as I'm writing my way there, that final image changes anyway. I mean, one thing I did do, which was different with the transformation sequence, the Dark Intelligence, War Factory, and Infinity Engine, was because I'm a producer, I write very, very quickly. I was way ahead of my publisher, right. And I decided to so that I don't have the problems. What do you call it? The logical, the logical inconsistencies through a book when you're writing the third book of the series and you keep having to refer back to the first one, which is already published, so you can't change anything. What I did was I wrote that entire trilogy all as one. Yeah. I produced the 3 books to first draft before I even had to submit the first one, so that I could actually go back and change things in the first book to make things work in the overall story.
It's really interesting because we've had several authors that they put that up there as something they try to do, because for the same things, it's easier to go back and change book 1 if it's not been released yet. So how long does it take to write a trilogy like that? 'Cause you said you produced pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, at that time, when I'm writing to first draft and when it's all going well and I'm operating properly, I will sit down and I'll do 2,000 words a day, 5 days a week. But because the plot complications, it all gets a bit more tangled as you get towards the end of the book. That generally slows down as I'm going to the end of the book. And when you consider that each of those books was about 150,000 words, you can do the math because I'm not.
Yeah, we tried to mathematize in the pre-show and
does not work out.
I just got a headache mostly, and then Josh built
I suppose if you said if I was doing it at 10,000 a week, 150, 450, 45 weeks for 3 books, but no, it's not.
Does your publisher have, like, they give you a timeline, or they say, hey, we want this by such and such a time, or?
Yes. Well, yeah, the contract specifies that. We want this handed in by this date. I'm normally handing it in before that date anyway. But, do you want to do your advertising bit now? Or?
Yeah,
that's awesome. That you're officially the best guest ever, because normally we just hang ourselves out to dry. We mess it all up.
Always forget about it.
And for you to give us that heads up, that's awesome. So
and I guess, yeah. So
do that thing that we do.
Yeah. The sponsor for this episode is The Sleeping Legion by J.R. Handley. A century ago, all but 2 members of Lance Scipio's unit were executed. He has been woken in a strange new time and has been tasked with whipping into shape the worst squad of misfits in the entire human Marine Corps. The price of failure is death, so no pressure. The year is 2565, and on Tranquility 4, near the future frontier of the White Knight Empire, guided by mysterious orders, the authorities at the human Marine Corps base of Beta City thaw Lance Scipio, and in 2441, an entire Marine company was executed, with the exception of Captain Grimgerde, and Sergeant Lance Scipio, the usual punishment for running in the face of the enemy, but these 2 were preserved, and as if they would be required in the future. Although Scipio is not expected to escape execution for long, he has been given a slim chance. For a Marine, a chance is all that is needed to change the fate of worlds. This entertaining tale takes many twists and turns, as Scipio not only turns his band of misfits into first-class Marines, but also teaches them forgotten tactics, making them a force to be reckoned with. The Sleeping Legion is a breakneck new sequence in military science fiction novels set in the world of the international best-selling series The Human Legion by Tim C. Taylor. The link to the book will be in the video description, obviously, after the show. It's in the live chat now, and you can check out J.R. Handley's website at jrhandley.com. So thank you, JR, for sponsoring this episode. We appreciate it. If you'd like to sponsor any future episodes, check out our sponsorship page, keystrokemedium.com, at the sponsorship program. So we're talking about kind of your process and how you go about writing your novels. Somebody on Wikipedia labeled your unique brand of fiction as kind of the epic scope of space opera with a lot of cyberpunk mixed in. Did you go about that intentionally, or is that just what you like writing, so that's how your novels came out as?
it just came out like that. I mean, could you call, for example, the Skinner? Could you call that space opera? Because there's not, there's satellites up around that the world of the Spatterjay, which is in the Skinner, and there are sailing ships on the seas, and all the action and everything that occurs is down there in the weird ecology of that world. There isn't much in the way of what I guess would define as space opera in that. Cyberpunk, it's the violence of cyberpunk and the body implants and all this kind of thing that's come through in it. I mean, it's all part and parcel of all of science fiction, of all of these books behind me. It's and I love it all. So yeah, I leave it to other people to define it. I didn't choose it. I just write what I want to write. So it's
And nowadays we have so many different genres and so many small subgenres and little niches and stuff. I remember it used to be a lot easier. You know, you had science fiction, fantasy, horror, and now there's like 30 different. You got to really drill down to get into all the different variations.
Oh yeah, what was the one? It used to annoy me because there was an awful lot of it in those magazines. Slipstream it was called.
You know, I've heard the term slipstreams, but I have no idea what that is exactly.
Yeah, they called it slipstream writing, and it basically meant that you'd read a story and it would be interesting, but it wouldn't end. that was
anyway. Hey, no spoilers, but there's no ending to this book.
Yeah, it just rambled on, and you thought, oh, what the hell is this? And I mean that's one of the essential things you have to do. You have to end.
There's got to be a payoff.
Yeah,
there's got to be a payoff to a story.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, not actually having like an idea of what genre you wanted to write. I mean, now when you talk about indie writing and even some hybrid and traditional writing, you talk about writing to market or knowing the genre that you're writing in or knowing the audience you're writing in. You're published by Tor now. When you first started, when you first presented Gridlinked to be published, did you present that as something, or did you just send it in as the story and they published it and found their own niche for it?
No, well, I mean, over a number of years, I was just doing the usual thing that any wannabe writer did, was I would send off a synopsis of a book and few sample chapters to any of the publishers that published science fiction. Mm-hmm. That's all. I didn't actually present it as I presented it as science fiction. It's science fiction. I didn't say that this is space opera or cyberpunk or anything like that. I think that what actually, another little story for you, I think that what actually helped, because you've heard of the slush pile.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm in it somewhere.
These companies like Macmillan and whatever, they'll have, or they did in the past, I don't even know if they even keep them now, but they would have a big old slush pile of thing that had been sent in, and anytime anybody could get a chance to read it, or they'd have a student reading it or whatever. I can't remember, there was a figure some years back when they were saying that they received something like hundreds of submissions a month, out of which they might publish 1 or 2 a year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what I did was because I'd published the Engineer, the short story collection, The Engineer, small press, and it was, small circulation. I think I earned, my total earnings out of that were about £120. That was it. Yeah.
Sweet.
But it got reviewed in a magazine called SFX, which is is on all the newsstands here. It's quite a big magazine. So when I sent my synopsis and sample chapters in, I copied that review and stuck it straight on the top, you know, and then sent it
There
in.
you go.
Nice.
So maybe that did it.
That might get you off the slush pile, at least get you at least an initial reading and things. Somebody showed a picture of the actual slush pile I saw a couple months ago or something, and it was like this mountain of bound, and they had stacked like a manuscript of loose pages, but then it was bound with string, like a package you would mail, and I never visualized it quite like that, and it looked very untidy and an enormous pile of stuff to read.
I mean, I'm not sure if they even have them now because, I mean, well, unless it's hidden in some back room. But the last time I went into Macmillan and wandered around their offices there, it's all very, very neat and tidy, and there doesn't seem to be any room there for a slush pile. So.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's all electronic now, which actually kind of brings me to my next question. Is what do you use to write? Do you just sit down? You say you sit down with an idea and you write. Do you use Word? Do you
Word.
use any other Word? Yeah. Do you like to start from the beginning and write beginning to end, or you do kind of jump around scenes? How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, yeah, I begin at the beginning, yeah, but quite often what happens is, with me, I do, I take it from different characters' points of view, yeah. So I'll have the one character going, one character, yeah, like this, and I write a piece, whatever, a couple of pages, 2-3 pages, following this particular character, and then another character. But quite often, as it moves on, I start rearranging those, like thinking, well, actually, this scene would be better set earlier, and then like moving it back in the book and rewriting it to fit in that piece. So it does start to move about all over the place. I mean, other things that happen as well. The plot threads in these books, with me, they can just they proliferate, you know, like spreading out like this. And what you've got to do is you've got to pull them all in at the end and make an ending. And sometimes I do too much of it. So, for example, the Voyage of the Sable Keech, I think I killed off 2 characters. Didn't kill them off. I mean, I completely extracted them from the plot and got rid of them.
Okay.
And one other character, another 2 characters I amalgamated into one.
That was actually my next question. Have you ever taken characters and then just compressed them into one? So that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, there's another one as well. Dark Intelligence. There was a whole plot thread in that I was pursuing, and as I got I don't know, maybe halfway through the book and so on, I think like, I don't know what I'm doing with that. I just don't know what to do with it. And in the end, I cut that entire plot thread out. But I don't throw these things away. I put them into a file called bits SF, yeah. And later on, I felt the urge, if you like, to write a short story. I took that plot thread and turned it into a short story. That was it was published in Asimov's. It's called The Other Gun. So
very cool.
Check that out.
I'm recycling.
There you go. Recycle, repurpose. It's a responsible way to write. You're saving the earth here. So I do have a question that I always ask, and it's my favorite question. And basically, it's something like this. So you write from multiple characters' points of view. Do you have a favorite character to write that's not your primary character, like a favorite secondary character that you like to write?
Well, yes. In my books, it's the non-human ones.
Yeah.
I mean, people have said it. Actually, my war drones and aliens and whatever like that have more character than the humans in the books.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy doing them more. I mean, for example, writing a scene in one scene I particularly enjoyed writing was in The Skinner. There were no humans in this. It was a war drone, which is like a war robot, and it was shaped like a giant chromed lobster. Yeah, playing chess against a sail, which was a big bat-like creature, which these bat-like creatures in the Skinner rented themselves out as sails on sailing ships. So
Nice.
That's playing chess. So
I can empathize with that with the sale characters. You got to have a little secondary job, pay the bills. Like that. I find that a fascinating topic to talk about because it seems like most writers they have their primary characters, but there's always those side characters are so much fun to write for various reasons.
Yeah, well, throughout the the Cormac series, they're going like, oh, can we see Cormac again? But to me, Cormac was a bit staid and a bit too law-abiding and nice and well, he wasn't that nice, but
not the adjective I would have used.
There's the other ones in it. It's like Mr. Crane. He appears in the Line of Polity, and then again in Brass Man, because he is the Brass Man, the 2.5 meter tall brass android who likes ripping people's heads off. So
as they do.
Generally a nice fellow, except for the heads ripping off part.
So somebody coming to this universe or coming to you as a new reader, where would you suggest that they start off with your books?
I get asked this so often. I also get people who like my stuff generally just like it. Because I have people that have started in the middle of series and gone, oh, I like that, and then bought the rest. Yeah, but I guess to give it a try, you could do a small book like Prader Moon or The Shadow of the Scorpion, or the collection of short stories, The Gabble. I mean, that'll give you a taste. Or just get straight into the series, but start with something like Gridlinked or The Skinner.
Right on. You've written, like I think the Owner Trilogy was written in third person. Some of your other books are written in first person. Do you have a preference on the point of view on writing?
I naturally, it's easier for me to go for third person. Mm-hmm. But what was it? I do that. Yeah, it's easy for me to go for third person, but sometimes I break it up as well. I'm trying to remember which book it is now. Oh, Hill Diggers. It's one called Hill Diggers. I think it's that one. Terrible, isn't it? I don't know my own books. Where most of the plot is third person, but the plot from the point of view of the main character is first person, I think.
Well, that's neat.
Well, and so with 23 novels, how many words do we think we're talking about here?
It's I think it's about 2 million.
Yeah. So a lot of writers do that, and you're talking about trying to remember all the details of all your different books, and you put it in perspective. We're talking about 2 million words and quite a couple of characters.
Yeah.
Keep those things.
This is the other thing that writing something like this, you do get so constrained by what you've written before. Because I'm writing now. I'm writing the Rise of the Jane, this trilogy, but I'm writing that and I'm thinking, like, have I got that right? And which book have I got to check it in or whatever? Sort of like if I'm writing about the Praetor, these big crab-like aliens are in my books. What colour's their blood? How many legs have they got? I'm pretty damn certain I've got the number of legs wrong a few times.
They're tricksy. Their legs change. It's hard to explain.
It's one of those things where I'd have like a huge encyclopedia of my own stuff, so I could just kind of
a spreadsheet of some sort. I always try to do a spreadsheet and get organized, but it never really helps. You still have to go back and.
Yeah, I've actually got a little bit of an encyclopedia running for it, but that was mainly because in my books, instead of doing like info dumping right in the middle of the story or anything like this, I was doing a bit like Dune. Remember the bits at the starts of the chapters?
Oh yeah.
Well, I all through my books, or most of them, I didn't do it in the Transformation trilogy, but through most of them, I do a little bit at the start of the start of a chapter. It'd be from a book called How It Is by Gordon, or one of my favourites from her lecture on modern warfare by what was the name? E.B. Heinlein.
Nice, just slip that in there.
Well, you got to drop a few in, haven't you?
Yeah.
Right. I need a name here. What's a good name I could use? I'll use Heinlein.
Yeah, has to be done. Has to be done. I mean, I've just done that just now. In fact, well, not in these last few weeks. The book I'm writing now, I wanted a female ship captain. She's a interfaced captain. She's actually her mind is interfaced with the ship and so on. Going to be a bit of a tragic character, and I was just sitting here and I was thinking, what should I call her? What should I call her? I was looking around here and looking at my shelves and everything, and then I was looking at the CJ Sherry up there, and I thought, right, okay, I'll call this one Morgaine. You know, I don't know if you know her books, Morgaine's Gate and all this, Exile's Gate and so on. So, stolen straight off CJ Sherry. Yeah.
There you go.
And what's the title of that book called? The newest one you're writing?
The newest one. I haven't got the title for the new one.
How do you figure that out?
Well, this will come up. I mean, I've written the first of the trilogy to first draft, and that's called The Soldier. I'm doing the next one. I think it's just going to be simplified titles through this. So this one may well be called The Ship or something like that. Not sure. It actually gets debated with the publisher and what is best. I mean, my working titles for animation ones was it started as I wrote them. It was just Pennyroyal 1, 2, and 3. Yeah.
There you go.
And I sent them to the publisher, the editor, and she came back and said, "Oh yeah, we want to do this and whatever like that," because I was using the name of a character in it, Pennyroyal, which was it's an artificial intelligence. But anybody who's not read my books, reading that, what are they going to think?
Mm-hmm.
What clue does it give them about what is going on in the book? Pennyroyal, it's a herb. Yeah, I mean,
right. Do they usually?
So there was
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say, do you normally find their title ideas? You're talking about your editors and publishers and stuff. Helpful. I mean, when they ever come up with just a crazy title, you're like, I'm not naming my book that.
Yeah, there's an exchange. It's usually with my input. I listen to like her argument about getting new readers into the books, titles that a new reader can relate to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I come up with a number of suggestions. This is normally how it happens, and then they sort of say, well, maybe this, maybe that, and whatever, and then it comes back, and then I say, no, right, it's that one. I mean, that's how it happened with Infinity Engine.
Excellent.
So Infinity Engine just came out in March. When do you think the Soldier will release?
It's usually 1 year after.
Okay.
That's the turnaround on these books. It's a year each.
And is this process where you're doing this new trilogy? Are you doing it? I mean, you said you already finished the first draft, and now you're working on the ship. Are you going to go in to the third book before you submit those, or you just submit them as you go? How are you doing that with this series?
Well, I've submitted the soldier already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's gone in, and an editor is looking over it. But if I carry on as I am at the moment, I will probably have got the next two written before I have to submit the second one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which I want to do because I want to, like I said, when I wrote the entire trilogy of the transformation at once, I want to be able to refer back and change things.
Yeah,
I've even actually done that with the soldier, even though it's gone off to the editor. I am making some changes in it, which I'm highlighting with the the yellow thingy.
right.
You guys
The
do track
highlight-
changes then in your document, send it back and forth, and do track changes with your editor?
Sorry, do I track them? Well, I want those ones.
Right. Well, I just meant like with your different drafts, since we're doing it digitally with your drafts in Word, do you and the editor use the track changes tool
Yes,
in Word?
yes,
Okay.
sorry, yeah. That's how it's done now. Yeah, my old editor, the one with the pencil, he retired a few years ago. He's gone to live down in Hastings and Brighton, and now it's all electronic.
Yeah.
If they're so we're coming to the end of the hour, and I've got a couple more questions for you. My first one is there anything that you know now about writing and publishing that you wish you would have known when you started out, and what is that?
Oh. Wish I'd known when I started out. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. I'll just say that there isn't. Everything that I've learned throughout, how can I put it? The things I've learned came at the right time. It's part of the process. I mean, having that dumped on you right at the start doesn't actually make it stick.
Right.
That makes sense. You might not be equipped to appreciate some of those things if they told you too soon.
I suppose one thing I'd probably learn was never go drinking with publishers.
This is sound advice.
Okay, I need to know the story on this one.
Oh, God, I've had some. Well, okay, I'll tell you the initial one. They wanted to look at my books. This was the first three, Grid Linked and all this, and I sent them in the full typescript because they'd only seen the sample chapters at that point. And then it's come into London and see us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I met the publisher and his reader in a restaurant in the Strand, and this was at about 1 o'clock. We had a meal, and they said, "Oh, red wine. You all right with red wine?" I went, "Yeah, I'm fine." Yeah. Now you know that they're an expert red wine drinker when they get a jug of water on the table as well. And I think, well, by the time we left the restaurant, there was this was 3 people. There must have been, I don't know, 10 empty bottles on the table. No, but it didn't stop there. It then proceeded to the bar. And it was just bottles of red wine, just kept coming, bottles of red wine. I mean, I don't know how many. All I know is that the publisher kept saying, I mean, he said something at like about 4 o'clock. Oh, I must get the 4 o'clock train. And this went on. It went on till about 9 o'clock at night. In actual fact, the reader had to show me to Liverpool Street Station. Otherwise, I'd have slept on the pavement. I mean, that was just one occasion.
Yeah.
Nice.
There've been
Very
others.
nice.
Yeah. How do you gauge a successful meeting? If I'm sleeping on the pavement at the end, then we did something right.
Oh, and the other one I learned from that: never drink champagne after beer. Anyway.
Well, yeah.
What is it? Beer? Is it? I always forget this. Is it beer before liquor?
Never say.
Never sicker. Liquor before beer. Never fear. Is that right? Or is it backwards?
Oh, I don't
Either way, I get messed up and I get sick. So
I'm pretty sure taken to the extreme, either one of them is going to do some.
No, the killer was that it's drinking lots and lots of beer, and then having the guy sort of say to you, "Okay, we'll go in this place. Let's have a bottle of champagne," and having and drinking champagne on top of beer. No.
I'm going to cross it off my list. I had that on my list to do.
Yeah.
I'm removing that.
Don't do it.
write that down.
Note to self.
So before we go, is there a bit of advice that you can give to any new aspiring writers about writing or publishing or anything?
Champagne and beer.
Or champagne and beer.
All right. Well, I mean, the one for aspiring writers is writers write. And it's somebody else, something said about it. It's that simple and it's that hard. I remember.
Yeah.
That's it. You got to write. And you got to do it every day. And you got to have discipline. And keep on doing it. And read. You know, there's no, it's not like you've heard of the Freemasons, yeah?
Yeah.
It's not like a club that you can join by rolling up one trouser leg or having a special handshake. You've got to produce this stuff, and it's got to be good, and that's how you get in there. There's no easy route. There's no like.
Absolutely.
We're going to have some sort of keystroke medium handshake. Make this work, but.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show, and do you have a website or someplace where readers or our audience can come and find you and look at your books?
There's Neal Asher, spelled Nealasher, nealasher.co.uk. It's all there.
Excellent.
There's a link. There's a blog there as well. It's all there.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, Neal, thanks so much for coming on the show today, buddy. It's been a blast hanging out with you. And I think it flew by way too fast. I'm going to have to watch it right after that so I can soak in all the epic goodness of this.
Yeah, very excellent. Thanks for coming.
Everybody that hang out in the live chat or that's watching on the feed later, thanks for watching and hanging out with us. Let us know what you thought about the show in the comments or in the blog post when it's up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you come back next week. We're going to be talking with Ian Garner on Thursday night, and Jack Campbell will be on live next Monday. So make sure you tune in for that. For Scott Moon, I am Josh Hayes. We have been live with Neal Asher. Make sure you come back with us. Well, we're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing and, of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. You guys have a fantastic week.